How do you feel like women's sports has changed, and Title IX, our respect for Title IX has changed from when you entered sports to where we are right now?
I think when I started, I had to play on a boys' hockey team. That's the reality of it. There were very, very few girls playing hockey at the time. It was a sport where if you said, "Oh, I play hockey," they're like, "No, you don't." And you're like, "Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I go to the rink." And there's always like this doubt that, "Oh, you can't play. That's impossible. You're a girl playing what is known as a male-dominated sport at the time." And now that perception's changed a lot. And for me, a lot of that has been the 1998 Olympics. And that was the first time women's hockey was in the Olympic Games. And since then, every year, the number of girls starting and playing hockey has grown tremendously. We've come a long ways, and now it's not as foreign, and now how do we get to that next step? And that's hockey, but then that's sports in general. And I think that the current girls that are playing, the people on college and continuing on afterwards, are the pioneers that need to take kind of the reins and continue the growth.
Donna, let me ask you this. You know these numbers, so I'm gonna ask you to make the case. What do we know empirically about what sports does for girls?
Research shows that whether you look at participation or health or success in school or in life after sport, that boys and girls benefit equally from sport. So we know that girls who play sports have higher levels of confidence, they have stronger self-images, they have stronger self-esteem, they're much more likely to graduate from high school, to get better grades, to matriculate in college. They're much more likely after college to go into non-traditional fields for women, which is very important because so many male-dominated fields are the best paid fields, be it engineering or mathematics or the sciences. Very important when you look at it from a health perspective, that girls who play sports lower their risk for heart disease, for breast cancer. You can go right down a list in terms of a litany of all the benefits of sports for girls. But those same benefits are there for boys, and they always have been. And one of the reasons why Title IX has received the unparalleled support that it has, 72% of the American public, male, female, Democrat, Republican, supports Title IX, even if it means loss of opportunities for boys. The reason why that's true is because no parent wants their daughter treated differently than their son. And that's why Title IX has really been successful. We know, for instance, that 49% of all high school students are girls. They only get 42% of all participation opportunities at high school level. That means 1.27 million girls are not getting a chance to play, despite the existence of an equal opportunity law. At the college level, it's the same story. 57% of all college students are women. They're getting only 43% of all the participation opportunities at the college level. And whether you look at athletic scholarships or the provision of equipment, uniforms and supplies, operating budgets, you go right down the line, we aren't close to equal opportunity yet. Has life changed for girls? Absolutely. Is there equity? No. So there's still a lot for Julie to do, and there's a lot for everybody in this room to do for not only yourselves, but for your children.
I'd like to enlarge the conversation a little bit beyond the U.S. and talk a little bit about athletic opportunities for women globally. The London Olympics are still very fresh in my mind. Back before the 2000 Olympics in Sydney, the magazine sent me on a story that I'm not sure we'd be able to do it today because it involves spending too much money, but we identified 3 countries that had never sent women to the Olympics or had only sent them to the Olympics under very restricted circumstances. Iran, where women could only go to the Olympics if they wore the hijab, the headscarf. So they had sent, I think, a pistol shooter since the revolution. Botswana, where they had never sent any women. And Uruguay. 3 very different countries, hadn't sent women or had sent women only in a token way for very different reasons. And it was fascinating for me, if you fast forward 12 years to go to London, it was a woman from Botswana named Amatli Mantsha, one of the best 400-meter runners in the world, who came this close to winning a bronze medal in the 400. A woman from the States beat her up by that much. I screamed in the tunnel watching the thing with frustration, because for me it would have been this great closing of the circle of that story. But how did Amatli Mantsha go from this little mud hut in northern Botswana in this country that had no infrastructure, no ability to provide these opportunities really for girls, to getting that close to an Olympic medal. And it's an interesting story. What happens is all this money that flows into the IOC, and we can say what we want about the International Olympic Committee and how greedy they are and how they tell athletes, maybe Julie has a bone to pick with this, they tell athletes that they can't advertise their sponsors because it would affect the value of the sponsorships that the IOC wants to collect. But the IOC collects a lot of that money and in turn makes grants, Olympic Solidarity grants, to various regional developing world coaching centers, like one in Senegal, where Amantley Mancho and a number of other young athletes from around Africa would go, get real coaching, get to stay in a dormitory, work hard with some of just the basic diet and training methods and technologies that in the developed world we all take for granted. And if not for some of that Olympic Solidarity money, the Olympics would be nothing but a kind of private track meet among 7 or 8 countries in the world. And I think that's a really important point, that we have that work to do. And we learned that through the London Olympics, that you can go from the situation in 2000 in Botswana to 2012, where, again, it was this close.
How do we expose more girls to sports who are from underserved populations, right? Because my daughter Anna has a good amount of access to sports. She plays field hockey, lacrosse, there's basketball. There are opportunities in her community. Maybe not as many as boys, but it's a heck of a lot more than girls, say, in inner city Baltimore or in Youngstown, Ohio, or some of these other underprivileged communities where you see the participation rates. I mean, Don Savo's latest report for the Women's Sports Foundation lays it out pretty starkly. Girls out in the suburbs and towns have basically twice as much access to sports as girls in urban environments. So how do we address that deficit, Donna?
No, I think this issue of socioeconomic level is absolutely critical. And there are a couple of ways we could do it. Number one, we know that 43% of the U.S. population and most of this lower socioeconomic level group is living in the major metro areas, which have fewer facilities compared to other populations in less populated spaces. So we've got to address the facility problem. A close, safe access. These are latchkey children in many cases who aren't able to access these facilities. The role of nonprofits is critical in these systems, and I think the role of the citizenry in terms of trying to extend the school day to 5 o'clock, to keep kids in school, and that's the perfect place to organize sport activities. But we have to recognize that we have to start worrying about this population. That's a population that's going to kill us in terms of health costs too. If they don't play, we have higher levels of obesity, we have more expensive health delivery system. We've got to confront this.
We have also students that are going to be our leaders and pioneers that need to get involved. Even within kind of this community here, we have a lot of student athletes. Can you kind of run some little clinics with some of the younger girls? Somehow, once a year, once a fall, have come in a day where you guys organize that. I think the more we can get involved also as athletes in the lives of others, that has a strong impact as well. And that also means that's a responsibility that I know, being on the national team, and I've talked to many of my national team teammates as well, is that's our responsibility, getting to represent our country, is that we've got the ability also to go into different environments and hopefully make an impact and also give our time back.
Women's athletics has come so far and came from a very idealistic place, particularly intercollegiate athletics, interscholastic athletics. And some of the excesses that men's college athletics have modeled, unfortunately, for us, we've seen them creep into women's athletics. And they're clearly not at the same extent, to the same extent that you see them in men's athletics, but I'd love to see them kept at bay. As the girls that are here in the audience today, as you go up and become athletic women in college, if you could guard against that and hold on to the things that the spirit of competition and fun and all the things that drew you to sports originally.
Participation is the number one issue. We cannot be satisfied with 42%. We have seen backsliding in 6 of the last 8 years at the college level. More new sport participation opportunities have been created for male athletes and female athletes. In 4 of the last 7 years at the high school level, same thing is true. So where we saw the gap between men and women getting smaller, we are now seeing it pull away again. And this is happening right under the nose of Title IX. So to think that we've made it, forget about it, it's not there. The second piece of the puzzle is one of the dysfunctional consequences of Title IX was to get women out of leadership roles. When Title IX happened, the separate women's and men's athletic departments got combined, and guess who got to be the boss? The male athletic director. So most of the athletic directors, the people who are doing the hiring, the people who are doing the distribution of funds, the people who are making decisions not to achieve gender equity, to fuel the arms race in men's basketball, men's football, those are the people that are putting barriers up right now. So the second issue that we have to fight is this leadership issue. Women have to be athletic directors. Women have to be head coaches. And we can't accept this 80% male environment. And the last piece is, and I'm agreeing with you, Tom, I'm not disagreeing, ethical integrity has to be in the game. I don't think you guys would be sitting there allowing your children to play if you knew that whatever this experience was for them was not a healthy thing.
That we cannot end the evening without hearing from one of our students, Ms. Porter, students, Dr. Walker, any students in the room. Please ask a question before we end the evening.
Oh, you already had a turn. No.
Last night, well, this question relates to Sports Illustrated in that industry, so I know Mr. Walker might, but I invite all of the panelists to answer. But last night I Googled Sports Illustrated, and I went to images, and an overwhelming amount of images of women in bikinis came up. And I was kind of surprised to see this, because I was saying, okay, Sports Illustrated, sports, women in sports, Title IX, we should be showing women wearing their soccer jerseys or their field hockey uniforms, and they're holding their sticks proudly. But I was overwhelmed with these images of women in bikinis that come from the Sports Illustrated bathing suit or swimsuit edition. And so I'm curious to know where this concept of putting women in bathing suits and putting them on the cover of sports magazines comes from, and what impact that has on women going into athletics.
Our inability to adjust as a brand, as a magazine, to what I'd like to think is a more enlightened attitude toward women and how they use their bodies. We're trapped because it's such a huge part of our franchise. What we have done over the years, which I think was a positive step, is that where we once folded the week's sports news into the same issue with the swimsuits, we now pair them off. We have an opt-out option for people who don't want to get it. They don't have to get it. We respect their wishes. And I think in the great human attempt to kind of atone or compensate, that a younger generation of editors there try harder, much harder, to find legitimate stories that through the rest of the year can give women who are doing something with their bodies other than making them available for observation their due. That being said, I've seen studies that have said that pointed out that the only time female athletes have been on our cover, or most of the instances have been when they've been victimized, grieving widows. So we have a lot of work to do too. And if there's only one question that was raised by a student tonight, I'm glad it was yours. Thank you.
Good question.